All right, so hopefully you have your supplies to create your bunny. So again, you're gonna need a piece of paper, and this is watercolor paper, so it's a little bit thicker, so it'll absorb the water well. You'll need a Sharpie marker and a pencil and eraser, and whatever watercolors you have, all right? I have 2 different sets here. These are just the ones that I have. So if you have like a little palette to mix colors, that would be helpful. If you don't have a palette, you could just use like a paper plate or you know, some kind of dish or something that you can rinse off. And then you'll need some water in a cup and a paper towel or a rag, and then a paintbrush. So for this project, this is about the size that I use, so it's pointed paintbrush and it does the job for the whole thing, okay? So go ahead and get your paper. And let's take a look at the bunny. Now, when I start out, I usually like to trace and just kind of doodle and like a rough draft sort of, just try drawing bunnies before I go to good paper and do the real deal. So I just sketch it, and you know, I looked at the pages of the book and other bunnies and just what was in my head kind of thing. And you know, when I was happy with how I did it, then I'd use good paper. So you might want to, you know, get your sketchbook out before doing this and just try drawing some rabbits first, okay? It's up to you. So you'll notice we're going to start with his face, all right? So if this is my full paper, his face is on the lower half of the paper, all right? You'll notice it's not in the middle, right? It's scooted down here. So if this is half my paper, it's a little bit lower than half. And what shape does his head remind you of? Sort of like a pear shape, isn't it? All right, so we're gonna start with his pear-shaped face, and then we're gonna move on to his nose and mouth, all right? We'll do his eyes and his body and then his big ears. Okay, so that's the plan here. So I have my pencil, and this is about half of my paper here. I'm gonna go below that, and I'm gonna start my pear shape on the lower half of the paper. So I'm using light lines. And I can always go back and change it if I am not happy with it. Because these lines will all get erased. So I'm just kind of going back and thinking about what a pear shape looks like, and I'm creating that. Okay. So that's his head. With softer angles here. All right, so when you look at his little nose, what letter is this right here? It's the letter Y, isn't it? This right here. Okay, so we're gonna do that. So on his face, you'll notice if I divided his face in half, it'd be about like, if I cut his face in half, it'd be right there. So you need to scoot down another third of the bottom of your pear. All right, so where it starts to fan out here is where you're gonna do your Y. And the lines aren't like crisp shape, sharp lines. They're more curved and soft, all right? And definitely have a little bit of a bend in this one here, okay? So then we're going to arc around here and make little wings on each side and join it together with a little bit of a curve. So you're gonna go beneath your pear bottom and make a curve. So it's gonna kind of come around like that. Okay, so something like that. Make corrections where you would like them. Okay, you can clean up the bottom line there. Okay. So then we're going to add some whiskers, right? Bunnies have whiskers. So your pencil is just going to kind of just glide across your paper. You're going to kind of start, the whiskers are sort of in the middle on each side here, and go ahead and make 3 little whiskers on each side. All right, and then we'll do his body. So we've got 2 arcs on each side around his little puffy cheeks. Okay, like that. And then we're going to do his eyes. So his eyes are sort of halfway between the top of his nose area and his head. So they're going to kind of go on the side of his head. And they're big. And you might want to leave that little highlight. Remember we talked about the highlight that reflects? And draw one on the other side as close as you can get it. Okay. And then we'll draw a circle around the eye. More oval shaped, right? All right. Now we've got ears, right? We got some big ears. That's going to go from his head to the corners of your paper. All right. Now notice that when they touch his head, they don't come to a point down here. They are thicker, right? They have to attach to his soft little head. So you're going to kind of start not in the middle, but a little bit off to the side, and you're going to make an arc that goes to the corner. All right. So big floppy ears. One on each side. Like that. And then you do the inside of the ear and just follow those lines pretty much that you did. Okay. So once you get that how you like it, then you're going to take your Sharpie and you're going to go over everything that you just did. Okay? I'm going to fill in the eye, I think. And we'll erase our pencil marks once we finish with our Sharpie. Clean that all up. I used to have a bunny when I was a little girl, probably 5 or 6, and you'll never guess what I named it. Bun Bun. Very original, right? So I'm sure that you are seeing bunnies in your yard, hopping all around, which is just a great sign of springtime. Okay, so I'm going to take my eraser, whatever eraser you have, you use yours. I'm going to clean up my pencil marks. So notice that I wasn't real concerned about following the exact line of my ears because I want them to flow gracefully and softly, right? Because if I go really slow, then my pencil kind of has that jerky, choppy look to it. And just kind of give yourself permission and freedom to let your pencil go and create those interesting lines that aren't super straight, or, you know, these are not geometric shapes here that we're doing, are they? These are very organic shapes. And let's face it, bunnies are soft, right? We want our lines to be soft. this up. These are called gum erasers, and once they stop doing a good job cleaning up something, you just kind of fold it back and get a clean area, and it sort of self-cleans its own eraser. It's pretty cool. And I've had this probably for 25 years. So they obviously last a long time. And they're not expensive. All right, so there we go. Now, my muted colors, for this I've used, in this tray I chose the charcoal black and this gray color. And then on this palette I have this dark brown and this lighter brown. So I use those four to do my bunny. So depending on what your watercolors are, you know, you'll have to pick from what you have. So so basically when you're thinking about your watercolor, and we're doing a lot of blending in this, you're going to use your palette to mix your colors. All right, so I don't know if you can see, here we go. I used this right here to mix my colors, and you want to create sections in your painting that have some depth to it. So this is really dark right here, and then some highlights. All right, so you want those two contrasts. When you don't like something you've done after you've painted it, I can bet the first thing is because there's not a contrast between light and dark. You're painting everything sort of the same, okay? So that's why blending and watercoloring is such a great technique, because you can achieve that with your colors. So I'm going to show you how I went about doing mine, and this one is not going to turn out like that. I mean, these don't even look the same, do they? His face is a bit fatter than his. This is more narrow. So, you know, your bunny's going to look a little different. Your colors are going to be different than mine, and that's great, right? That's what makes us unique. All right, so I'm going to mix up some of my colors. I'm going to start with his body down here. All right, and I'm going to use browns and blacks to get that started. And you can either wet your paper first, or you can go right on dry paper. It's up to you. So if I put water, just water, it sort of thins out my color. You see how it's kind of cloudy and puddly there. And now that I've got wet and color on here, I can add more color, and it makes it stronger and deeper, like we were just talking about, right? So I can blend that in here and just kind of play with it. You can play with it on your palette. You can kind of look at it on your canvas or whatever you're using here. And I'm going to just paint the rest of this with water for the moment. Okay. And just go over this like this first. So now I have a wet surface. So what that does is it keeps the dry color from becoming solid and hard with a hard, rigid edge, right? We really are trying to achieve a softness here. And all right, so this was a different kind of brown. It's a little bit brighter. And you know, when you look at an animal, their fur grabs light, right? And there's different shades and tonalities to it. So that's kind of what we're achieving here too. All right. So I'm going to come over here. So the light is facing this way on my bunny. So the darker side will be this side, okay? That's what we're gonna go for. So my darker colors will be on this side of his face. Oh, I don't want that. That's green. Whoops. Let me fix that. All right. So I'm gonna do his cheeks over here. So I start light and I build up when I'm painting with watercolor. All right. And you can see how it just spreads all on its own in a very organic way, which is kind of cool, isn't it?
That's close enough.
Okay.
Get a razor.
Okay, so I'm going to keep going up this side, and I'm going to leave the whites of his eyes really pure white. Okay, and I'll come up over here and do the same thing. So I can just wet my brush. It has color on it, and that color just keeps spreading out like that. So I get the light and I get the dark, okay, just like we talked about. All right, so I'm using more of the blacks and grays and browns over here strongly, and then on the other side I'll do more of just brown, maybe with a little bit of gray in it. Okay. Now, if I feel like I've got too much color on here, I can always pick up color with just a wet paintbrush. So I wet my brush, I dry it off a little, and then I can pick up some of that color that way.